very good evening, everyone. Welcome into your box seat, brought to you in association with Woodland Stud, where they stand Sweet Lou and, of course, Bettor's Delight, amongst others. Michael Guerin, great night at Addington Raceway the other night. 41st running of the Neville Fillies Final, a target for so many of our very best ladies of that age over the years. A very good evening to you.
Evening, Greg. Big hi to everybody. Hope Wednesday was good for you. It was really enjoyable watching last Friday night, but it did raise a couple of really big questions, because we're seeing the markets for the jewels change enormously, and horses who we thought were $1.40 chance on opening, like Enhance Your Calm, who's actually won a derby since then, but has now been replaced as the jewels favourite by a horse who there's enormous questions about this weekend. Nervous time ahead for the Oscar Bonavena supporters. We're seeing the same thing. Princess Tiffany, Belle Of Montana, replacement of favourite for the jewels, and Smooth Deal in one change. So, Greg, all of those things are going to shake out a lot more over this week. So it's like a two Friday story leading into the jewels build-up next week. So a lot of things in play, Gregory.
Yeah, definitely. We've got a lot on the show there for you. Barry's belt, she just keeps on winning. We'll talk to Barry Purdon, the master trainer, as well, about her and what lies ahead as well with her. We'll review Oaks Night. There was a whole lot of good racing there. Ultimate Stride got his big win for Phil Williamson. He's got a tricky draw this week though, so a few challenges there. The Jewels Hopes, some permutations around that, including a look at Oamaru on Sunday, where of course that's the last chance for horses to qualify. We'll have a look at the blood spinning part 2, the process, just how they go about that, and we'll have our best bets, which incidentally last week we got both of them home. But let's get straight to the 41st running of the Neville Fillies Final. They're about to hit the start point here, Michael Guerin, with all of the favourites drawn off the back row. There are a few drivers pretty keen to get forward early.
Yeah, they went hard early. Now, the key factor here early is that Princess Tiffany punches through behind Wainui Creek and is able to get off. I sort of thought it was 50-50 whether she would. Outside her is the stablemate Bubbled Up. Now, Bubbled Up cops a couple here, so gets a couple on the bum to try and stay into that gap. And the horse going forward in those situations, Greg, will tend to get out because it has the forward momentum. And the other thing early doors is the aggressive drive here by Gavin Smith. Now, I believe
the lead time
called into the room about this.
He has.
Right?
The lead time here, Michael, was 24.1. To put that in perspective, Cruz Bromack, who holds the all-comers record for this distance, set in the New Zealand free-for-all, they went 24.8. They went 0.7 of a second quicker than the free-for-allers did on show day.
Okay, so let's just, for those of you who are paying attention to the winner, of course, it's back in the field in the harness jewels colours, the yellow. It's enjoying this early burn. First things first, Gavin Smith's drive. More than happy with that. I mean, everybody talks about don't just hand the lead to the Purdon Rasmussen horses. He has every right to go as fast as he deems he needs to, and if he's thinking he wants to get to the front, then he wants to get to the front. Chevron Supreme drops out here. I don't think that's just because of the drive, because it's only run a lap. I think basically, Greg, it comes down to the fact that it's a horse with a fair amount of quirks. And once it's got there, did he go too fast? Maybe. Has he got the right to do that? 100% he has. I have no problem with a driver going as quick as he deems he should go on a horse, unless it's something ludicrous like it's 100 to 1 and he's attacking a $1.20 chance, which wasn't the case here.
And All About Dreams unfortunately got stuck behind it, as did Wainui Creek, and another very important horse to look for here, just going past them, Best Western, who made up an incredible amount of ground. Princess Tiffany had burnt early, Belle Of Montana and the runner-up Kayla Marie hadn't. They were able to swoop home here. Let's get Mark Mack to get them up the Addington Straight.
Inside run, Princess Tiffany is gone. Belle Of Montana ran to the top from the favourite. Kayla Marie's into second. Belle Of Montana is a length over Kayla Marie. Belle Of Montana and Zachary Butcher win it. Belle Of Montana beat Kayla Marie, Princess Tiffany.
Feeling at the 200 metres when you went whoosh, there can't be much better than that.
Oh, I have to be honest, that was one of the biggest thrills I've had in a long time, you know, to sit on a filly as good as this one and to be where she was with the lap, to go as far back as she was against good horses, you know, and the way she rounded them up, that was pretty awesome, that.
I've written down here 57.7 for the first half. Did it feel like you were doing that?
Yeah, it did, which, you know, was always going to suit her, you know. She's always come good off the speed, and that's her style, you know. She's as quick as any horse I've driven, and you know, when they went that hard early and we got a sort of good drag up into it and round the bend, I had a handful, and I thought then, you know, we're a real show here, and look, she put pay to them. So
Did you feel a better horse than what you felt in Australia?
To be honest, hey, it's probably hard to say, but to me, she's getting better and better. She's learning to race now. She's so relaxed in everything she does. She never overdoes herself, and when you ask her to go, there's always a little bit more in the tank. So, you know, you're just a huge thrill to be on a filly like this.
And as we always do, one Barry Purdon, he's just a master.
Oh, he's a genius. To get her back from Victoria not so long ago and to back her up and beat horses like Princess Tiffany and Kayla Marie the way she did, it's a master stroke, and I'm just sort of lucky to be in the seat that I am.
On to the Oaks, Jules. Well done.
Oh, looking forward to it.
Yeah, very excited. Zachary Butcher there, 13th Group 1 in New Zealand for him. And look, the way the race panned out, Michael, was just beautiful for her.
Look, it was. I think she is at her best when she's able to be saved for that sprint. I'm not sure she'll get the chance to do that this week in the Oaks, but look, she's a very, very good filly. My inclination had been, prior to that race, that even though it was 2-0 to Belle of Montana over Princess Tiffany, that Princess Tiffany might just have that X factor and might be the better horse. But you can only believe these things for so long before the facts become evident. Now, I think Princess Tiffany raced below her best there because Kayla Marie beat her pretty easily. But the bottom line is it's 3-0 now to Belle of Montana. She is now our top filly. The market for the Oaks will reflect that. And it's a hell of a thing, Greg. It continues this unusual trend we've seen in the last 10 years. Horses who haven't raced at 2 coming on and becoming our champion 3-year-olds. It goes back to Auckland Reactor, Adore Me, and this filly is the latest in that line. We've also seen it with Ultimate Sniper. So we're seeing a lot more of these non-2-year-olds, Greg, going on to become our best 3-year-olds in their division.
And we're lucky enough to be joined online by her trainer, Barry Purdon. Thanks so much for your time, Barry. Another big thrill for you at Addington Raceway. And, well, she just keeps on raising the bar, this girl.
Yeah, good evening, Greg. Mick, yes, certainly a great thrill to have her, Greg, for sure. And, yeah, she's certainly done very, very well.
Barry, she's obviously handling everything you put to her. Her trip to Australia, not that she needed any making. Have you noticed anything different about her? Because she just keeps on getting better.
Yeah, well, like most horses, Greg, the racing usually improves them a bit as they go along, and she's always been quite talented, so she's naturally just improved a bit more.
Barry, her record now, as Michael's just said, she's 3-0 over Princess Tiffany, but her record in her own right, having now won 8 from 10, and she just keeps amassing this stake money, and she's come up with a good draw this week, so your confidence levels, I doubt, will be dropping at all.
No, well, you know, like she has got a good draw on paper, but I think all the ones that will be hardest to beat have drawn inside her, and even the 3 on the second line, I'll be punching through, so it'll be interesting. It'll be, Zach usually puts them in the right spot, so we'll see.
Barry, congratulations to you and to Zach, and of course to the owner, Dean. Just go back to this non-racing at 2 bar. Is it a situation where sometimes, because I presume she was good enough to race at 2, you simply don't race them because it's not in the horse's best interest? Or is it that you need to be so good to win a race at 2 that it's not worth doing unless you're not able to win maybe a Group 1?
Yeah, I think a bit of both, Mick. I mean, I've always thought if you can give a horse a bit of time, you're better off. I mean, she probably was good enough to race at 2, but she was a bit immature, so we decided to wait. And, you know, it's probably rewarded us, but... yeah, you know, I mean, I think it's a long enough season for the babies, and, you know, you've got to just keep in mind that you hope they go on, and as I said, if you can give them a bit of time, well, I think you're better off.
Talking about going on, Barry, obviously the next 2 starts would seem to be set in stone, obviously this Friday night, then the Jewels. What's your attitude towards the Breeders' Crown? Because it's sort of a one-off race. I know this filly's owned in Queensland, so you would have the option to go to a Queensland Oaks. Are you better off squeezing the lemon as far as you can in their 3-year-old season because there's not much for them at 4 into the second half of the season bar? Or is it a case where she's so good, you start to think about a Queen of Hearts type race in December, and that could play into how you see the back end of the season?
I think so. I mean, we can give her a little let up after the Jewels. That's if everything, sort of take one thing at a time, to be fair, but we just got to get through this race on Friday first. But and then hopefully it'll follow onto the jewels, and then we can give her a little freshen up and probably get her ready for the Breeders' Crown. Hopefully, Dean's quite keen to have a go at that, and that's understandable. And as you quite rightly said, there's not a lot for her early in the season. It's a bit different than the 2-year-old colts and geldings, where you really want to be, probably racing at November at Addington, but with the fillies, it's a bit different. They wouldn't get a start till around about just after Christmas anyway. For
all the great champion horses you've trained, and I'm not sure what order they'd be in, Chokin, Christopher Vance, Holmes DG, Luxury Liner, you haven't had many open class mares, Barry, compared to the boys. Is she an open class mare? Is she a horse who's going to go on with the job because she looks to have the speed of them? And you've always said that Start Dreaming was your best mare. Is she now starting to get to the stage where she might be your best ever female pacer?
Yeah, well, I guess you'd have to say that, Mick. She's certainly done everything that's been asked of her, and you've got to hope they carry on. Of course you do, but she certainly, I'd be surprised if she didn't. She's just always been nice to work with, and got a good attitude, and she's always been on your side, as they say. So, she's got everything going for her, Mick. She's got the speed, so I think she'll develop into an open class mare.
Barry, you had 2 in the race. Have Time didn't let you down either.
No, we don't want to forget about her. She's done really well. Have Time, and she's got a nice draw. She's had some hard trips sometimes in the bigger races, and has still stuck on very well. So, we're really pleased with her too. She's a really nice filly.
What about Friday night in the Oaks, Barry? I know you don't tend to give Zach driving instructions, but Have Time has drawn 1. It'd be awfully nice to be in front of most of your main rivals, because as you said, there's a second line there. If you pull back, you could be pulling all the way back. Maybe a chance to try something different. Would we potentially see Belle Of Montana using her natural speed in the first part of the race?
Yeah, well, it'll look at it. You're right, Mick. I wouldn't give Zach any instructions. He seems to put them in the right spot. But, I guess he may have to just go out a bit and have a little bit of a look, because, as you said, there's 3 from the second line. The good 3 have drawn 1, 2 and 3, and they'll be probably punching through. So, look, it's entirely up to him, Mick. I wouldn't know what he might be thinking, so we'll just leave it there.
Barry, there's pretty much nothing you haven't achieved in harness racing. You've won everything that matters in the Southern Hemisphere. At your stage of your career, when you're a Hall of Fame trainer, you've won more races than anybody else in New Zealand. Is it still exciting for you to have a horse this good when you jump behind them in the sulky and you work them in the morning and you're putting them on a plane to Melbourne or a plane to Christchurch? Do you still get that same buzz that you would have got 20 or 30 years ago?
Oh, yeah, I still do, actually. And I think if you lose that, it's time to probably finish. But, look, you've got to try so many horses to get a filly of her ability, or a colt for that matter. It's always a thrill, and it certainly puts a bit more of a spring in your step when you get one, that's for sure, mate.
Barry, great night for you Friday night. 3 winners at Alexandra Park as well. Soul Ambition, Ball of Art and Benson Boys, who's a pretty nice horse. But you've also got your 2-year-old down for the Sires Stakes, and Bad to the Bone. He hasn't got a great barrier draw. You've got a lot of history in this race. I think 6 or 7 winners, and it goes all the way back to Bill Bob, the inaugural running in 1984. It'd be nice to grab another one.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, well, he's come up with a bad draw, but that's what happens sometimes. But look, he's a really nice horse. I think Time will be his friend. He's a big fella, and but he's still good at the moment, and I just hope we can get a nice run through and get somewhere midfield. That's for sure. But no, he's a nice horse.
Thanks so much for your time, Barry. Congratulations again on Friday night. Really looking forward to seeing how your team fronts up again. I'm sure they'll race accordingly, and we always appreciate your time on trackside, and in particular here on the box seat. Yeah, pleasure. Greg, Mick, thank you. Yeah, there he is, Barry Purdon, always terrific with his time, and the way he conditions a horse, particularly to get them ready for these absolute feature races. He's won over 100 Group 1s, Michael. He's as good as anybody. It's one of those things, when you've been around somebody as long as Barry's been around, you get used to them. You think, oh, that's good. And
I hate to use the rugby analogy, but it's almost like a Richie McCaw or a Brendan McCullum in cricket. You're so used to them that until one day they retire, and I can't imagine Barry's planning on retiring, then you go, wow, that guy was good at what he did. Now, this filly just reminds you again, and Jack's Legend, who probably wasn't a great horse, who he managed to win a duels with and run second in the New Zealand Cup. Very good horse, but he gets the best out of these horses. And I'll be honest with you, Greg, sometimes we all go to work and you go, I could take or leave this today. And that's why I wanted to ask that question. Is it still exciting for a guy who trained Chokin, one of the best horses I've ever seen, to get out of bed in the morning and train a 3-year-old filly? And it's great that it is, because you wouldn't do it otherwise, Greg.
No.
You couldn't justify the amount of time that goes into horse training for the lack of return often, unless you genuinely loved it. And you can hear that in Bar's voice there. So he is an absolute treasure of the harness racing industry. And as I said, sometimes you just need to put it in perspective and think, wow, that guy's as good as Waller, or he's as good as Tommy Smith, or he's as good as his brother. And when you put all that in perspective, you do realise that these are people who don't come along every 5 or 10 years.
No, they don't. They certainly do not. Let's hear about those trainers and drivers that were just in behind the winner.
Kayla Marie in the Fillies race, brave effort.
A very brave effort, yes, yeah. Sort of had her all the way. It was they rolled along pretty good most of the way, but yeah, she made good ground up the straight.
2,600 metres suit her more, do you think?
Probably. I think there's about 5 really nice fillies there, so a lot's going to come down to the draw.
Okay, Natalie, what was your assessment?
Look, she went okay, I thought. Just a better filly on the night beater. She had a chance.
Okay, what about with a viewpoint onto the Oaks and the harness jewels? Is that confidence still there?
Oh, look, hey, you got to. I mean, there's not much for these when they turn 4, so you got to press on. So yeah, just sort of just back to the drawing board a bit. I'll get a blood out of her Monday, just make sure she's all right, and go from there. But she was okay, but the other filly was just better.
Nice pick-up drive and a good finish.
Good drive to get Matt, yeah, and went good. Yeah.
What about during the run? What was going through your mind?
Oh, the further the race went, the better the bit of a run turned out to be, and I ended up with a good run. The winner followed me and was just far too good anyway.
What are your thoughts on your drive at 2,600 metres?
Probably suited better, yeah. But they're a pretty good bunch. The first 4 or 5 are a very good lot of fillies. Yeah.
Pretty brave effort, Blair.
Yeah, look, she had a chance, Matt. We got a very good trip in the race, and she's run incredible 5th. So hopefully next week she can get that same sort of trip. But that's what she needs, and she's always thereabouts, but just probably a step below the better ones.
Done you proud again?
Yeah, she's gone super. We got a bit of bad luck just down the back straight, 1 or 2 stopping, and we sort of got carted back to last. But she got home real good, wrapped with the run, and hopefully get a bit of luck in the New Zealand Oaks, and she'll be right there.
Yeah, she's the one I think will be the big improver, if you like. She went massive, Michael, to come from way back there. Now, you've got an update on Princess Tiffany.
Yeah, so Mark and Natalie's team have had a virus, and it's affected most of them, as these things tend to do. They were concerned post-race, without trying to make excuses, because Mark said point blank, no, Belle of Montana was too good for us. But they were concerned that she would have that virus. They took a blood test on Monday, came back Tuesday, and they said, look, not much sign of a virus. She was tying up, which they think is a little bit of a concern, but you can work on that. But they are thinking she hasn't been affected by the virus. They were making no excuses. Beaten by a better horse, she faces a bigger job this week from a second-line barrier draw. Even though they burned hard early, I still think she's underperformed on her best, which was the New South Wales Oaks. Just on the virus, they're also taking blood tests today from Turn It Up and all those type of horses, Enhance Your Calm. They think that the virus is now at the back end. So horses like Smooth Deal, who had it, and One Changed, are thinking it won't be affecting them heading to Friday. More importantly for you at home. For the Jewels, they're thinking they'll be well over it by then. So they said it's one of those things, they're coming through the back end of it, but I'll be honest with you, Greg, it makes me, when I look at, for example, Smooth Deal this week, if I'm thinking about having a good go, I'm thinking, no, just calm down, hold your horses, excuse the pun, because any time a team gets a virus at Group 1 level, I don't want to be on.
Okay. All right, good information to have. Press for Time took out the Neville Consolation. Of course, she's the Southland Oaks winner. She rolled to the front here, Michael. They went considerably slower than they did in the big dance, but you can only win, and this Tom Beggery trained runner just keeps on doing that.
This was about the easiest $1.70 I think you've ever seen. I was really surprised she wasn't $1.30. I know it's easy to say that now because she just won, but I think Dinah Brown was about, I don't know, $3.50 or $4 or something, and I would have thought the gap between the two on recent performances was rather enormous. Just an easy way to start the night for punters, and the bookies gave you a chance, and well done to Tom. All young trainers need a decent horse at some stage. He had one in BD Kassan, it's moved on, he's found another one, and now he's got a chip in the big game. He gets to think, do I go to the Breeders' Crown if she's eligible? Do I go to this Oaks or that Oaks? And when you've got a chip in the big game, Greg, I think it makes trainers, or it just makes people more aware they exist.
They were 3 seconds slower, but like I say, you can only win, and she just keeps on doing just that. Right, we can move off from the ladies now because, it was well worth having a good look through that, Michael. This Garrard Size Stakes Series final for the 2-year-olds. You've just mentioned Smooth Deal. Here's the market for it. So it's open $2.30. One Change, who's been the massive mover, is into $2.10 now. And a little bit like the Princess Tiffany versus Belle of Montana, One Change is starting to build up the reputation against Smooth Deal.
Yeah, agreed. With Princess Tiffany and Belle of Montana, you keep thinking, well, Princess Tiffany was so amazing in the New South Wales Oaks, she must be the best. And Smooth Deal was the same. A couple of his early season performances, and he was a sales topper and all the stuff that goes with that, you're like, wow, there can't be a better juvenile in the country than him. But One Change has come out and beat him fair and square. So this was them when they met. In the sales series this was, so,
yep.
And he comes out and just goes straight past him. There's no excuses here. Smooth Deal's in front, he didn't work overly hard, and the horse is coming I would say 2 lengths from behind him, and beats him fair and square. Now, I spoke to Mark about that yesterday. I said, how do you rate them for our punters watching the show this week? And he said, I don't know. He said, I can't draw a line between either of them. And then he stopped and he said, I will tell you something. He said, Natalie worked One Change on Tuesday morning, come off the track and said he worked sensational. Like, we're thrilled with him. He's got even better. Maybe, Greg, he's just a better horse. Maybe the $20,000 or $30,000 yearling in this case has turned out to be the better horse than the $220,000 yearling. So I'm not sure about that.
What we haven't seen from him yet is early speed, putting himself in the race. He keeps on lobbing into nice spots, via good drives for that matter. But, you know, will be interesting to see what his modus is this week, given that he's drawn outside of Smooth Deal.
What'll be interesting will be the driving tactics. Because if Smooth Deal leads, and would they let him go around and get the front of it? Or can you not do that on Smooth Deal? So we saw them willing to park their own horses in the Messenger. Let's not forget, in the Messenger, Spankham led, and Chase Auckland had a good go at them, and they said, no, not interested. So what they choose to do here is going to be crucial, because on that evidence, if One Change gets in front of Smooth Deal, he's at least as quick as them up the straight, if not quicker. So that'll be really interesting for that race. Maybe you can ask on Friday night, you or Matt, I think you're both working there, and try and work out what they're thinking. So we try and give you the best information we can about perceived or expected driving tactics, so it helps you play the markets as best you can. It's not always right, Greg, but in a race like this, I think it could be incredibly crucial to the outcome.
$170,000 for that feature. Let's have a look at the 2-year-old trot from last week and Ultimate Stride, talking about high-price yearling purchases. Here he is in front. I was going to say stablemate, but of course Cracker Hill is trained by Brad Williamson, gets to his outside, but this horse in the hands of Nathan Williamson was too strong.
1:25 to go. Running to the infield, American Pride. Ultimate Stride's in front. Cracker Hill Gallop. Midnight Dash has gone to second, and Ultimate Stride is too good. Ultimate Stride beat Midnight Dash and the galloping Cracker Hill.
Well, your first feel of him race night, I'm picking it was a pretty good one.
Yeah, no, he's a lovely horse, Greg. He's got a good motor, and you know, he proved that tonight. He went
Nice barrier draw, you were able to roll forward with him, but he wanted to take his hook a wee bit, didn't he?
Yeah, he was very keen early off the gate. He really wanted to race that horse of Johnny's that galloped, and he really was keen. So, but, you know, he settled nicely when he was in front. He was sort of enjoying his work out there, and, yeah, he just wanted to lug up the track a wee bit in the straight, so we'll just talk to Dad about a few maybe wee gear alterations. But, no, he's certainly a lovely horse. He's got the ability there, and it's just, you know, I'm sure with a bit of ring craft, he'll be a lovely horse.
And that is the concern, particularly this week, Michael, because he's drawn one the back row. He follows out Caress, who will get off the machine pretty well, I'm sure of that, with Robbie Holmes. But yeah, I'm not... Tractability, he's just not quite there yet, but he was too good for them last week.
He was. This week I'm not as concerned as I would be in a pacing race, because one on the second line's not great, but he's next to one Magic Kenny who just rolled into an uncontrollable gallop last week. And if he is recalcitrant once again...
Well, they took the pole off him, and look, he's right on the gate there, and he was just wound up, wasn't he?
Yeah. So, look, either way, he's going to go forward really quickly, or he's going to get out of its way and gallop, one or the other, in which case there'll be a gap. So there'll be a gap, but the question is, can he give the other horses, including Muscle Mountain, a big head start? I think he's going to be an exceptionally talented 3 and 4 year old because he's such a big horse. So you would expect him to keep improving, but look, he's obviously very good at the moment. I like this crop. I think there's a lot of nice horses in this crop. I think Cracker Hill, who galloped in that race and was disqualified, is a really nice horse. Muscle Mountain's been a good horse. Even some of these back in the field, like Mark Purdon's horse here, goes to the inside. And
something a bit different. Huey Green. Hey, just on Huey, he won too. Won Friday. He's back on the racetrack first time since July. Yep. Good luck to them.
Good old Huey. Ended up on the dog track during the New Zealand Cup Day a couple of years ago. So
I think one person described him as having very good eyesight that day. That was you.
Let's get to the market. This is interesting because Muscle Mountain's done nothing wrong, and you could make a case he should be $2. So I can see him closing in because I think most of the horses between him and the rail, or the markers, aren't going to get in his way. I just don't think they're good enough to, or experienced enough to.
And I did speak to Greg Hope about where he's at. Obviously, he missed last week through that clerical error. He said he's exactly where I need him to be. So he's more than happy with his condition, and he's drawn the front row, and he's already showing gate speed. So
it does raise a question, doesn't it, about, because we see this so often, horses miss payments for series, and it's so easy to do. I've had emails from people to pay up for horses and haven't done it. Belle of Montana, I think, was missed something she was eligible for. I think it might have been the sale series. It was the sale series. And it's no one's fault. It's your own responsibility as an owner. But with mail being what it is, you get so much mail these days and bank statements and stuff. And
well, you do. Bank statements, yeah.
Most of them are negative, Gregory. But I'm not sure we've got this system right. I'm not sure. Harness Racing Victoria had one where once you're eligible, they just bill you until you pull out of it.
Yes.
And I'm not sure that's right either, but I don't know. But I know that happens too often, and often it goes to the first owner in the book. So I'm the first owner for a lot of my horses, so I've got to pay for them. And even then, it's a finicky system where you've got to get the money off other people. You just don't care. Say you're overseas. Say someone watching this show goes overseas for 3 months and they miss a sale series payment.
Yeah,
I'm not
it can hurt you.
I'm not sure how it should be done, but I think at the moment a mismatch of both emails and some going out in the mail, I can see how things fall through the cracks.
So who's going to win that 2-year-old trot?
You're going to back Muscle Mountain, clearly.
Yep,
there's no reason not to.
Okay, agreed. Speaking of Australia, Poster Boy back this week. First up since his third in the Miracle Mile. Franco Nelson's back. Geez, been around a long time, Franco. Now, 2014 he ran second in the New Zealand Cup.
Consider he got beaten by Adore Me in the New Zealand Cup, and Adore Me has raced on, gone 147.7, broken down, been retired, had a foal, it's won Group 1. And Franco Nelson's still going around.
And it is the Queen of Pacific this week, our step up. Won the back row from the stand, from the mobile, sorry.
By the way, Tell Me Tales will win that. If you feel like having a bet on Saturday night, if you're that way inclined, Tell Me Tales will win.
And it's the Australasian Trotters Championship for $50,000. Don't talk to me about us not having enough stakes. Over this month at Addington Raceway, $2.2 million in stakes, Michael. So we're racing for some good money. $50,000. McLovin's got barrier 1.
Stakes raises a really interesting question about the Harness Jewels, or any big race. If you're racing at Alexandra Park in a maiden race these days, or a C1, whatever it's called these days, a rating 55, and you're going to go to the Jewels, I spoke to Gavin Smith about this, we'll explain more later, you say to yourself, it's 13,000 to win, 12,000 to win. Am I better off sticking around to race the 55 horses than going to the Jewels where if I run second,
good question,
or even second or third in the Oaks? Now, I know you get black type for that and it stays in the stud book, but yeah, these days with the way stakes are getting at Alexandra Park, which are the best in Australasia, sometimes it's more tempting just to stay there.
Well, at Addington this month, I'd be picking most people would want to be there. Short break for us. When we come back, we've got some more Addington action and a whole lot more on your box seat. let's get straight into the Hara de Trotters Aged Classic. Destiny Jones was back, of course, from the Rowe Cup where she went so well. She'd worked around to the lead and was pretty brave in this race, Michael, but Valoria, 3-year-old win in the Hambletonian was very good. It's been a bit in and out since.
And the Dun run continues. For Robert and John, you've never sort of thought about them as being trainers of trotters at the highest level. Sunday Sun the last 2 Friday nights, then this. So they're really hitting their straps as trainers of trotters, and you're going to start wondering whether people are going to start asking them to go to the sales and buy more. Smart horse, not as good as Sunday Sun, but not many are, and obviously an open class horse. No reason it won't end up in the Dominion, Greg, or can't come to the Inter-Dominions.
But has the harness jewels clearly, and with gate speed, it's got a few things in its favour, and win number 7 for it, and the Newmans, who've been great supporters. Gee, there were some good runs in this. Ruthless Kayla, fresh up win, outstanding, really good in this too.
Well, she almost won.
Yep, Theodosia is just flying for young Chris Butt. His team is going really strongly, and here was the start, and Valoria is just starting to develop the whole game now.
Well, and bizarrely, there he is rearing up, and how often do you see this? The horse who's a pain in the arse at a standing start gets it right the second time around. The big story out of the race, punting-wise, for the Jewels is King's Landing, and he was very poor by his standards. Now, I know he galloped in the home straight, but Valoria just dropped him at the 400. So there is Valoria, 1 on 10 metres.
Punching through.
Stepped away beautifully, as they often do when they muck around at the start. King's Landing, I don't know what to make of this.
No, he didn't look comfortable. They
look flat.
Yep, we got Matt Cross actually to go and talk to Mark Purdon about that.
Mark, King's Landing, what do you put that down to?
Just not sure. He didn't trot perfect, but he felt good round the last corner, but just got hanging in bad, and the further we went from the 500 on, the worse he got, so he was just awkward and eventually broke himself up.
So that's what Mark Purdon had to say. I just thought he looked a little bit in and out, didn't he?
That just goes to show you how different our perspective.
He thought he felt awesome round the bend.
Mark thought he looked good round the last corner. I thought he looked terrible.
Yeah.
But obviously it's different when you're sitting in front of them, and he's right, and obviously I'm wrong. But to me, I was like, man, this thing's flat. So I've got no idea, but it really confuses the Jules picture, because him/Winterfell were incredibly tight in that market. Now, again, and this is about the third of the All-Stars horses we've seen replaced at the top of the market recently. Both him and Winterfell have dropped back into the pack, and Sunday Sun, as he had to him, and Majestic Man have really improved enormously in the market. In saying that, Greg, the barrier draws come out the Friday before, so they're 9 days away. More than anything that happens on the racetrack, the barrier draws are going to affect a market like that.
Well, Winterfell goes around this week in a mobile. He's off the back row, takes on Ronald J. What else is in it?
Emirito Sun.
Yep, Habib the Inter. Did you bring the beers?
He's been a victim of a success last year. He's come back in a really tough grade, has Winterfell, and it doesn't give you any room to move with them, to muck around with them and teach them stuff. I think he's had an awfully hard job after. And hey, he did win a Derby, a Sires Stakes and a Jules last year, but gee, it's hard for those 4-year-old trotters to come back into that grade. I know Sunday Sun's done it, but he's quite a dopey, immature type of horse, Winterfell, to look at. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not really willing to trust him as my Jules pick yet, but Sunday Sun has to be top pick because he was enormous.
At the Auckland Carnival. Yeah, he was. Ashley Lopez just keeps on winning, and that was the case on Friday night. Positive drive, Ultra Orlando here from John Dunn. Sensational sectionals here, Michael. 54.2, 26.3.
He's just very, very quick. And as this market for the 4-year-old Jules has developed, and there's been news out about that this morning, he's clearly second pick of the race by a mile, because Alta Maestro had a knee complaint. They took him to the vet on Tuesday, and it was found out that he's got a knee issue of some sort. Doesn't sound major, and he's out of the Jules. So why that's so important is Alta Maestro would have been a major speed influence in the race.
Particularly if he had drawn one of the front 8 positions.
Exactly, which he was a 66% chance of doing. You know, there's 12 in the race, 8 spots on the front line. So he's a horse who would have got there, and because the Duns have now put their cards on the table, we said, we're not scared of the All-Stars, we're not handing up.
Yep.
And I think that's good for harness racing. He goes forward, he can park out, turn it up, or he can park out Ashley Lopez. He's out of the race. And a major, major speed factor in the race is gone. So that can only be good for Ashley Lopez or Turn It Up. Just on Ashley Lopez, I think he's a forgotten horse. We sort of forget how good he was. He won a Jules. There's that market there. He's a horse who raced at a very high level in Sydney, was probably unlucky not to make a Miracle Mile. When you go through this race, Henry Hubert, I suppose, is in play. He had scintigraphy after, I think he had it, after the Auckland campaign. Falcon Stride trialled yesterday. Shane Tritton, all his horses who are coming to the Jules trialled yesterday. They're very happy with those. You can find those trials on Twitter if you follow Shane and Lauren's account. And then, Greg, the rest of them, from 6 down to whatever else, even as good as Benson Boys is and Vintage Cheddar is, it's really hard to make a case they can beat an Auckland Cup winner, I think.
Yeah, well, he's $1.35 now, so basically
really?
They've turned the tap right off there.
That's short.
You mentioned the 3-year-old contenders for the Trotters before, and this horse, Oscar Bonavina. It was great to have him back at the track because he has immense ability. This took some doing. Smashed the 3-year-old record, formerly held by BD Kassan and Prince Fearless. 3:18.2, first up, enormous run, but it's not over for him, and Mark Purdon will talk to us about just how far he's come. Of course, all cashed up, the news about him coming out, that he's coming in this section too, but Oscar, he was simply too good for a pretty handy bunch of horses there.
He's a good horse. He looks to almost have as much, if not more, scope than Enhance Your Calm, but it's brutal to say that about Enhance Your Calm because he won one derby and was beaten a nose in the other. There's just something about this horse I love. He's just a wonderful little horse. Let's get Mark Purdon's thoughts, and then we'll get into this intriguing puzzle, and there's lots of pieces in this puzzle, about Oscar's chances of being at the Jules.
Oscar Bonavina, just great to have him back, isn't it?
It's great to have him back, yeah. He was super tonight and better than I expected, really. So,
You've got enough money to get into the harness, Jules. Bit of improvement there, do you think?
I'm sure there'll be improvement, yes. So be interested just to see how he pulls up tomorrow, but fingers crossed all's well.
Okay, part of the reason this has come about, this discussion, and the article that you wrote on HRNZ, was 2 years ago the horsemen approached the board at HRNZ and said they only wanted 12 runners in the Jules, which is just staggering to me, because they were the first to complain when the Aussie invite came in, hence the reason why we ended up with 13 in each Jewel. So now they've come back and said, no, we only want 12 in it. So what that effectively does is, where there's an Australian invite, there's only 11 sets of connections that'll get a start from New Zealand. Okay, so it completely goes against what they originally said, the horsemen. So now we only have 12. Oscar Bonavina is currently 10th, but there are 2 potential horses that could usurp him, making him 12th.
Well, bizarrely, there's actually about 8.
But
there's
realistically,
only 2 realistic. Now, I'll speed this conversation up for you. Oscar's 10, all cashed up is coming, so there's 11 Kiwis going, right? So 11 Kiwis get into the race, he's number 10. Full Noise races at Gore on Saturday. If the best version of Full Noise turns up, because he's like 600 bucks, he'll go, he won't make that noise, but he'll go past Oscar. Now, this gets interesting. Get Lucky for Alistair Black races at Addington on Friday in a sales series race he can win, but that stake is not eligible, so it doesn't matter. He can't get past Oscar, but he's also in a race at Oamaru on Sunday, which is the qualifying cut-off day. And Greg, he's $370 behind Oscar Bonavina. If Get Lucky runs 4th in the race at Oamaru, the last race you can qualify for the Jules, for the whole season is the last race at Oamaru. He runs 4th there, he gets $380. So he would beat Oscar by $10.
And Oscar's favourite for the Jewel.
Now, I think when everything shakes out, that Oscar Bonavina will be there Jules Day. Someone will scratch, something will get sore. It's just the way life works. I think it'll happen. But there is a chance he won't be there. And that's a very real possibility. Now, other horses who could get past him, there's 3 or 4 horses racing in the Northern Trotting Oaks on Friday night. Now, I spoke to Swiss Mrs. trainer, Gavin Smith, and he said, we're almost certainly not going down. She only needs 1,500 bucks. She runs top 4 on the Oaks, she gets past him. But he said, we're almost certainly not going down. So that's one horse not to be concerned about. The others, like Fortunato and those sort of horses, I don't think would go. Oscar Bonavina had his joints injected on Saturday morning, so they couldn't start him this week. So he can't start. Spoke to Mark about that. He said, we're going to roll the dice. We've got no choice. We can't race this week. We're aware this may happen. Yes, I think he'll be there, but it's maybe a 25% chance that he couldn't be there, so you can't back him at this stage. All cashed up as the Australian invite. He ran third in the New South Wales Trotting Derby the other day. What this video doesn't show you is he burnt up and went pretty hard here, Gregory.
Blake Fitzpatrick, had a decent look at him. Yep.
But the horse who wins, Zebek, is actually driven by young Jack McKinnon. So Jack's across there. He's working for Anton Galeno, and this isn't one of Anton's horses, even though it's in the Aberdeen Farm colours. It just bolts him. So well done to Jack. This is his biggest career victory, but all cashed up was good enough that he can come to the Jewels, and he's got speed and he'll be an influence there.
Yep, we look forward to seeing him here as the Aussie rep in that regard. So, yeah, few connotations there.
Do you think Oscar will be there? What's your gut?
I think he'll be there, and I hope he is there, because I think he's the biggest threat, and obviously he is tote-wise to Enhance Your Calm, and I'd love to see those two going to war up the straight, as we like to see in virtually every Harness Jewels race.
What's important is, if he is the first emergency, that still gives him a 12-day window to get in.
Yeah.
Because the scratching's a Friday before the Jewels. So he is still in play for 12 days. And over the course of the Jewels, over a lot of years, there's almost always a scratching of some sort. So he's still a chance to get there. But I wouldn't be taking $2.
Michael, I did a little bit of work on the Oamaru Day. Hopefully I haven't missed any here, but look at all these connotations. Total Diva and Dr. Susan, 2-year-old Diamond. Simone de Beauvoir, who hasn't actually started yet. I think it's going around at Addington too, or it was down to race there. Dinah Bolt, who finished second last week, is going to Oamaru on Sunday, which again is a late play to try and get in the 2-year-old section. He was very good. Overzealous, who we'll talk more about soon. Get Lucky, you've already mentioned. Spot On has a chance if it wins there. Donna Goulart Chokin can move into the 3-year-old Diamond, and you see the rest there. Zazoe, Lone Star Lad, who's in at Addington and Oamaru, and Phil the Money can jump into the 4-year-old Diamond.
And I think with most of those horses, and I've got a horse who's going to go to the Jewels, and it's the same for us. We're not going to win. We are not going to win. And they are not going to win, more than likely. But you want to be there. People want to be there for the big days, and you get about $3,700 for starting. So yes, you want to go to those races. So most of those horses would be in the mix somewhere on Jewels Day, and it'll be fun, and the owners can enjoy the experience. But Get Lucky's different. Get Lucky's not only a factor in the Jewels, it is now an enormous factor in whether Oscar Bonavena will be there or not.
Yeah, well, you just mentioned that horse, and of course, your horse is racing in race number 1. It is the PGG Wrights and Yearling Sales 3-year-old final. We have favouritism battle here between Cheerful from the All-Stars, who I don't think's over the line by any stretch, 270. One Apollo, who was superb in the Oscar Bonavena race. When you consider he's run a record, and One Apollo made up at a big stretch late in the piece there. Doff Your Cap, who we'll have a look at winning last Friday night. What I liked about Doff Your Cap's performance is he's taken a lot of working out this horse, and he's still not the finished product, but this is as solid as he has trotted in some time.
Yep.
Or maybe ever.
And I think there's a lot of horses in this race who have had their problems this season. Cheerful's been the most consistent, but she was still only okay in the Derby when trapped wide. So Doff Your Cap's a horse you thought, oh, he might go one way or the other, and he's improved. Get Lucky's got more solid. And One Apollo, who has had to race in quite a tricky grade, who won this race last year, of course, he's also coming to his peak. So when we targeted this race about 6 months ago with Kratos, we thought, oh, we'll be first or second favourite here. But most of the other contenders seem to be coming in at their peak. So I think Get Lucky's got a really good chance. Spoke to Brad Williamson about him. He said, we're going to send him, put him on the top end and try and win him. In these races, you want to be on the horse in front. So for what it's worth, punters, at 6.5, I think Get Lucky is a good each way chance. And I don't think Cheerful is a $2.70 chance, even though she might win.
Big money final for the 2-year-old fillies as well. Again, it's with PGG Wrightson. We've got the unbeaten Spellbound at 260. She's drawn outside Amazing Dream 220. And a Spellbound stablemate, Tiffany Rose. This should be a terrific race, this one, Michael. What happens early will be imperative to the finish, I'm sure.
I haven't seen a lot of Spellbound. This is obviously her most recently at the trials.
Yeah, she led early, then took a trial and then did this. She really sprinted up the straight and encouraged me to think that she will be absolutely bang on for this.
Yeah, I've seen all her races, obviously, but she's a horse I haven't seen up close. I don't know whether she sweats up or whether she behaves herself or whether she's a natural. I just don't know enough about the horse. I'll see her Friday night because I'm going down. But one thing about the dun horses is, because, and this has become very evident, they're not scared of the All-Stars and they're happy to park them out. And they've got 2 in this race. That makes it really tricky for Amazing Dream. I doubt Amazing Dream is just going to roll forward and get to the lead and be running away and winning. It might, but I don't think it's going to be. So this is going to be a really interesting race, even though it's a small field. Often these races are very low-hanging fruit, but in this case, I think it's a pretty decent
Every
bunch of
horse
horses.
that Spellbound's beat, Fancy, Miss Ruby Sunshine, who won at Forbury last Thursday night, and Gemma Mack have all won races. It won at Timaru on Sunday.
Good
so
call. And Maharani actually beat the older horses last week in a standing start of all things at Forbury Park. So there's a bit of depth to this race, maybe a bit more than you probably thought.
Wanted to roll in Tickle Me Pink's win as well. The Hara D Trotters Northern Trotting Guineas in front. Too good. That's a lot of muscle to its outside, and Gil Favour looking to run on, but she just franked what she did in the size.
I can't believe the bookies gave 2.6 for the horse who was going to lead, and well done to them for giving you a chance. I think she paid $1.90 or $1.80. This is a very good filly, better filly than I probably realised she was. She's obviously got the guineas of the Oaks this week, which I think she'll win. Greg Dempster got the jewels. It's a tricky one with her for the jewels. I'm not entirely sure she was mine. I'd bother. I really would. I would think about it, because she's already got black type. So you say to yourself, if I go down there and I don't beat Enhance Your Calm, would I better off just going to Aussie and racing in the Victoria Oaks? But
Food for thought.
The Breckons like to roll the dice on these things. But again, she has options where she could go Victoria Oaks, home field, Australian Trotting Derby, and alpha males injured or out, so therefore that comes into play. And the Breeders' Crown, which is split boys and girls. So if she was mine, you know what Greg I'd do? I'd enter her for the jewels, and if she drew bad, I wouldn't take her. That's
Okay.
people may not like that, but that's what I would do.
I'm sure they won't like that. I'm sure they'll give us some feedback on that as well.
But you know what? When a horse gets to that level, it's not about the fun. It might be for the Breckons, because they've got a bit of coin and they love racing their horses, and good on them for doing it. But a horse like this, she's worth an awful lot of money. She can win a lot of money.
I don't think we want to be encouraging people to wait for barrier draws and then scratch, though, because that is basically saying that one other horse is going to miss out on a chance.
Well, no, because the emergency would get in.
Well, then the next person would have got a chance, potentially. So
maybe they should have two emergencies.
Maybe they should.
It won't happen. They're not going to do it.
She's won 6 from 9, and she's doing a wonderful job. So we hope to see.
If she was your horse, would you send her to the Jewels? Would you send her to Australia? If she was your horse?
If she was my horse, I'd race her at the Jewels, because I'm a New Zealander and I've never had one there, and I want to see one there. So hopefully that will be the case one day. We need to leave Addington Raceway there, take a short break. Speaking of the Jewels, we've come up with a few stories that now appear on HRNZ, and you may get to see them on trackside as well. This is overzealous. It is one of the great stories leading into the Harness Jewels, and yeah, I suggest you get online and have a listen to these, because they're well worth a look. Back in to your box seat. Of course, last week we caught up with Bill Bishop and Nick Ergren. This week, Lindsay Caldwell, well-respected vet in the Canterbury region from her Prebleton vet base, and Lee Pilcher take us through the process of blood spinning. Lindsay, autologous conditioned serum or blood spinning. Just explain to me exactly what we're talking about here.
So basically, autologous conditioned serum is a product that is derived from the patient itself, and it's going to be injected back into the patient after some processing. There's nothing added to the serum, but it does go through a process. So what Lee's doing here now, the serum, the blood that you see there has been exposed to, it gets put into those vials like you see, and there's some glass beads in there, and they're coated, and it goes into a ultraviolet light. It goes in there for 10 minutes, and then after that process it gets put into the incubator and gets incubated for 24 hours.
So what does the light do?
So between the light and the glass beads, it's stimulating the cells to upregulate and produce more of a certain number of proteins, and these proteins are anti-inflammatory proteins and growth factors, which basically, in layman's terms, you're upregulating the body's natural anti-inflammatory proteins, and you're upregulating proteins that we call cytokines, which are signals in the body to bring in cells that help with repair and growth.
Okay, so once it goes into the incubation process,
yes,
that's when it separates itself, serum from the red blood cells.
Yes, so the red blood cells, as you can see in those vials, they've settled to the bottom and the serum sits on the top. And so it sits in there, incubates, allows those cells to produce those proteins, and the red blood cells to settle to the bottom. And what Lee's doing now is actually removing all the serum, which is the yellow part on the top, from the red cells on the bottom. Those red cells are just going to be discarded. Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Which provides us with some confidence, I suppose, around this process, because the confusion around blood doping would require the red blood cells, and you get rid of them.
Correct. So blood doping, the whole idea behind blood doping is to artificially increase the body's natural oxygen carrying capacity. And in fact, what we're doing here is removing the entire oxygen carrying capacity from the blood. Yeah.
Right, so the serum then will be put into vials, which are 5 mils, are they?
Yes, 5 mil vials.
Okay, so out of a bag of blood from one horse, you're likely to end up with how many vials?
Usually we get back between 45 and 50 vials, syringes. I think it's sometimes as low as 40, but it all depends on what percentage of the blood is serum versus red blood cells. So if you have a horse with a high proportion of red blood cells, you're actually going to get less serum, you know, from that process.
Okay, so it lasts for up to 12 months. Therefore, any one horse could be treated 40 to 50 times then.
Yeah, so basically those syringes are frozen and they can last in the freezer up to 12 months. We know that it's good for 12 months. It may be good for longer, but that's the expiry we put on it at this point. We're confident that that's, you know, that it's good for that long.
Okay, there's 2 ways of getting the serum back into the horse. 2 main ways. Explain those.
So traditionally, autologous conditioned serum has been used since the 80s in both human medicine and in horses. In horses, people will more commonly know it as IRAP, and it's been used in vet medicine for years. And so traditionally that is used on, it's a slightly different process, but essentially it's the same sort of thing, and it gets put back into, most commonly, the most research is around putting it back into joints. There's a lot of really good research into autologous conditioned serum in humans being used for soft tissue injuries, back and spinal injuries, and those sorts of things as well. But that sort of stuff needs to be done completely under veterinary supervision, under their recommendations and their treatment. You know, and you know, as far as I'm concerned, I've had a couple of conversations with different vets about the process, and you know, I'd recommend they come down and watch the process themselves and be comfortable with it in order to do that. But the other way that this can be used is by the owners and being injected intravenously, and this is a sort of a newer use of autologous conditioned serum. It's being used, you know, in a number of different countries all over the world, and it's injected IV. I think a lot of people have been using it, from my understanding, as more of a pre-race. So they'll give it, you know, you'd have to basically give it at least one clear day ahead of time. To me, that doesn't make as much sense as using it as a repair and recovery treatment. So say after they fast work, post-race, after they fast work, because essentially it's an anti-inflammatory, and it helps promote repair and recovery. So you know, basically you can use it for management of joint disease, management of theoretically of bleeders, which we know that a lot of horses are minor bleeders, a large percentage of horses are, and other airway inflammatory conditions. Yeah.
You're clearly a believer in this process, aren't you?
Well, I've seen it work, you know, and the proof's in the pudding. And to be fair, I went in slightly skeptical.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't think that. I thought it would be a drop in the bucket, you know, giving it. And you know, I do see really good results on an anti-inflammatory level. You know, we use other anti-inflammatories all the time for the same sort of thing, and it would be comparable. And I think in medicine, human and veterinary medicine, we're moving towards more of these biologics, things that are, you know, patient-derived treatments, things like stem cells and PRP and IRAP and all those things. You know, I think this is a positive thing for the future.
And a big thanks to Bill Bishop, Nick Ergren last week, Lindsay and Lee Pilcher, of course, brother of the late Neil, for their time. I thought it was a really interesting insight into something a bit different in the game. It certainly wasn't an advertisement, as a couple of people have suggested to me it was. I just wanted to know more about it, Michael.
She's an intimidatingly smart woman.
Yes, she is.
I don't want to go to war with her about anything. What does it cost?
It's $850 plus GST, but as I mentioned there, that's for 12 months effectively.
Well, the reason that's important is this. If this is $5,000 and therefore it's only useful to people at the highest end, like the All-Stars horses or, you know, Tiaka, whoever, then I think it's a bad thing. But the way horse bills are, and $850 isn't an insignificant sum of money, but if you've got a horse racing, it can cost you that much to transport a horse.
I'll give you some stats here. 120 horses, 25 different trainers across both codes. So it's being used by a whole lot of people.
I'm not going to have an opinion on whether it should or shouldn't be allowed. If vets who know all about the stuff reckon it's fine, it's fine.
And that's both vets we've used on this, plus Andrew Grierson, who heads up the HRNZ team. Right, what have we got?
Oh, by the way, well done.
I enjoyed doing it. It was good fun. All right, what have we got around the country this week for you? We have Cambridge, $25,000 pick six there Thursday, 5:13, 10 races. Alexandra Park runs alongside the massive night at Addington. They've got the Northern Trotting Oaks with Hada's D Trotters there. Look at that list. Huge. $25,000 pick six down the bottom, but almost $750,000 in stakes there at Addington Raceway on Friday night. The 11 races there. Gore race Saturday. 11:38 will be the start time for that one. Awamaru with those duels connotations. 11:45, 10 races there on Sunday. Nice work for them too, getting the fields out nice and early for us. $20,000 terminating pick six, Manawa 2 on Tuesday evening. Bets of the week, we got both home last week. I've gone for Give Me What I Need, who gets in off the unruly. So race number 3, I thought it's a massive chance. And you're with one in your race.
Yeah, look, I think One Apollo is a good bet. I think I'm actually going to back One Apollo and Get Lucky. And if Kratos beats them, I'll be happy regardless. By the way, I forgot to say last week, Neville Fillies Final. Neville have re-signed as sponsors for this series another couple of years. They've sponsored it for a long time.
21 years, Michael.
Yeah, so well done to Neville. You're standing behind the industry. Not as big an establishment as they used to be, but they're still sitting strong for harness racing. So well done to Neville on that.
We haven't got any Woodlands runners this week. We've got some picks though from there, and they're pretty cool. Look at that, early morning, bit of fog around, and the horses getting fed out there. So yeah, that's Woodlands, and they are great supporters, of course, of us here.
And among their runners is Smooth Deal, of course, who is the second favourite for the Sires Stakes on Friday.
All right, we haven't got too many shows to go before we get to the harness duels, but the build-up is well and truly underway. Good luck to all of the connections making the top dozen, of course, to get into the big dance on the 1st of June. That has been your box seat. We'll see you in 7 days.